everybody, Brigham with Drift here. Today I'm stoked to tell you 4 things that I think you should know about the Jones Storm Chaser. Before I get into it, take a look below so you can see my specs, some of my biases. All of our comments come from riding these boards primarily in the backcountry and in powder and in free ride situations. And the Storm Chaser, this was an absolute favorite last year. We had an epic season, and I rode this a lot. So the first thing that I want to tell you, and with a shape like this, it shouldn't be a surprise, this thing floats like a dream. I rode this in the 157, which I thought was perfect. And even though it looks pretty similar to the Storm Wolf, this is a different board. The Storm Wolf is narrower and has some camber. This is flat, maybe even a little reversed camber to just an epic amount of early rise in the nose, very long nose with a lot of setback. You've got a little bit of 3D shape in the nose, and then you also have a ton of taper. And then the swallowtail to help that back end drop a little bit. It just has everything that you would expect in a powder board. So then you're wondering, how does it do everywhere else? This is the second thing I would mention. This board can be pretty fun on a smooth groomer and in some slush, but without the camber, without much of a tail, pretty easy for this thing to get bucked around. So your trade-off is not that great of a board in variable conditions. In fact, this might be the kind of board you either are riding all the time in the backcountry in perfect pow, or maybe a few laps at the resort, and then you swap it out for something else. To me, totally worth it. If you've got a board and you want the pure POW board, awesome option. Love this board. The third thing I would mention was a pleasant surprise to me is that, this shape is what looks like a very surfy shape. Big floaty nose, really short rear end with the swallowtail that's going to sink, tons of setback and tons of taper. You think you're going to be turning off of the back foot a lot and just really slashing around on this thing. And this is a board for sure that you can slash with, and it is pretty surfy. But I was pleasantly surprised to find that it's actually quite stable as well. I rode this at the reference stance, which is 23.5 inches. Kind of wider than you might typically get with boards. And I was stoked to find out that you could still charge pretty hard when you wanted to on this board. And it's actually quite stable on the back end. So even though it is pretty surfy, if you want to point it, if you want to hit some little cliff drops and stuff, totally doable, which I think is awesome because that's how I tend to ride. Even though this board was helping me want to be more surfy, I loved that I could still feel pretty comfortable bombing on this thing. So little bonus there. On the downside, I think part of why it's so stable is because it is super stiff back here. And you can see when you hold this thing, it's a heavy board. And I'd say from here all the way to here, this thing is thick. And especially under that back foot, super stiff. So that adds to that stability and some of its versatility, but it is kind of a hefty board. To me, worth it. I wouldn't stress about it. The last thing I would mention is basically I think this is the perfect POW board. The only thing I would change is I wish I had it with a different top sheet. I don't love the white in general. This is a matte finish, and it just gets kind of ugly and dirty looking real easy. And I took some Windex to this before making the video because it was so dirty. And there's still all kinds of just spots and stuff. I just don't love how it looks. And maybe worse than that is that this particular top sheet paint has a tendency to chip off. There's a couple of spots here under my bindings. Not a huge deal to me right now, but I have seen some people that have warrantied this top sheet, which is on a few of their boards right now with the Christensen logo and stuff, where it's chipped off a bunch and they've ended up warrantying it. So they'll take care of you if it's an issue, but that's my only beef. Other than that, I mean, this is a board I would want to ride on all the best days. Loved it. That's the Jones Storm Chaser. Thanks so much for watching. Hit us up in the comments if you got any questions or any feedback. Stay tuned. We got some more boards to talk about.